Hello, welcome to part 2 of the mini lesson on tips for writing good dialogue. We covered these 4 tips for effective dialogue in part 1, and now we're going to see them in action in an example. So here's an example from a short story called I'm Not Eating That. In the story, a girl who's new at school, I think she's in 8th grade, she is invited over to a new friend's house for a sleepover. And she's there with a couple other new friends. The main character's name is Rebecca. I'm going to read you the example here, and you'll see as we go through that we can find examples of all of these elements of effective dialogue writing in just this little example. So by 7 o'clock, Rebecca was exhausted, desperate to eat something and get some sleep. She'd been having a good time, her sides hurt from laughing, but she was ready to settle down. So when Harriet mentioned going to the kitchen, Rebecca's stomach did a happy leap. She didn't notice the cruel grin spreading across Carrie's face. "What are you making in that glass?" Rebecca asked Harriet. "That seems like an awful lot of corn syrup." "Nah, it's just right," said Harriet. "This is the secret ingredient for the best game of all," said Carrie, in another one of her run-on sentences. "I just know you're going to love it. It's so much fun, and it's gross and hilarious and scary and exciting all at the same time. And it's called What's for Dinner," said Harriet. She slid a foul gray-green mixture across the kitchen table to Rebecca. "You go first." So they're playing this game and obviously making up gross drinks with random ingredients mixed all together. So first, let's look at the dialogue in this and see that it has a purpose. I highlighted some examples here. So when Rebecca first asks, "What are you making in that glass?" it draws the reader's attention to that glass. And when her friend Carrie says, "This is the secret ingredient for the best game of all," it reveals some information. We are intrigued now. It moves the action forward. Same with, it's called What's for Dinner. That gives us the name of the game. And that last line, "You go first," really puts the ball into Rebecca's court, and we see that action move forward. So each of those pieces of dialogue really has a purpose. As far as format goes, notice that each time someone speaks, a new paragraph starts. So this whole paragraph is Rebecca speaking, and then we get a new paragraph with an indent and the quotation marks for what Harriet says, and then when Carrie speaks, we get a new paragraph here too, and on and on and on. Dialogue tags, you'll see that each time someone speaks here, we get a dialogue tag letting us know who it is. So in the first example, it's Rebecca asked Harriet, and we get said Harriet, said Carrie, said Harriet. Don't worry about repetition. Some people are like, "I don't want to say he said or she said over and over and over again." Repetition is actually not a bad thing to have in dialogue tags. Readers can almost just sort of skip over it automatically, so it's not a big deal. And finally, there's one great example of an action beat here that lets us picture what is going on. And actually, there's another example up at the top that maybe I'll add. But as I read this last bit of dialogue, "It's called What's for Dinner," said Harriet. She slid a foul gray-green mixture across the kitchen table to Rebecca. "You go first." So with that highlighted green sentence, we can really picture what is happening while they're having this conversation. We see Harriet sliding that glass over toward Rebecca. So that's an action beat. It works really well inserted right in there in the middle of the dialogue. I would say that this is an action beat too, up at the top where it says she didn't notice the cruel grin spreading across Carrie's face. That puts a picture in our mind as well. All right, there you have it. These are all in just one short little dialogue example, this author is showing all 4 of these tips for writing good dialogue. In the next assignment, I'm going to have you practice some of these tips on your own by identifying them and then adding in writing your own dialogue, little examples of dialogue using these 4 tips. Best of luck.